Welcome to the Picky Girl Travels podcast, a show for Black women who want more out of life and to live it as they see fit. The message here is all about defying convention, embracing adventure, and regretting absolutely nothing. I am your host, Adelia Aborishade of pickygirltravelstheworld.com. And I am excited about today's episode. I guess I probably say that all the time, but I really am. And I am excited about our guest today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Biba Atta. I am a spiritual intuitive guide. I also do energy practitioning work, which is around managing the nervous system. And it's also to access higher self, inner child, all sorts of wonderful things we can do with it. And I'm an avid world traveler, and I am excited to be here. And thank you for having me.
I have said multiple times that I feel like women have been conditioned to doubt their own instincts, to discount their own intuition. It negatively impacts us that society has taught us to do that. And then when I think about my own experience and how much, because I don't know how much of my story you know, but like the first half of my life, full of trauma and abuse, and a lot of what I tolerated because I did not listen to my intuition. I did not trust my gut and my own instincts. So it's kind of been not a sore spot, but it's been something that I'm trying to be more vocal about and get more women to think about, paying attention to their intuition. And when I say intuition, like, how do you define intuition?
Good question. Intuition is defined as just an inner knowing without any logical or analytical reasoning. It is something typically that comes up when you have no idea about, unless you have a crystal ball or you have a magic time machine and you could peer into the future, which, a lot of us don't really have that full ability to do. It is this feeling within you that something is going to happen, something is coming, there's something for you to be aware of. And there's some action that this is warning you or advising you, I should say, to take or not to take. So that's my definition. I know that's like really roundabout and amorphous.
I mean, it sounds accurate to me. Now, in the work that you do, how does intuition or that kind of work, how does that play into the work that you do?
It plays into the work that I do because it's accessing it on a deeper, maybe not a deeper level, I don't want to say that, just having more of an awareness of it and a trusting of it. I've developed or practiced, trying to figure out like how I want to say it. It's not develop the intuition. The intuition never needs to be developed because it's always correct, but it's my awareness of it and my faith in it. And also learning the ways that it shows up in what I do. So if I am working with someone and I am tapping into their energy is what I like to call it, but just allowing myself to get more in touch with your vibe, then there may be some intuitive hits, some intuition that comes up about you. There may be something that I feel in my body that's like, there's something off here, or there's something that I need to share with this person. I may hear something that I wouldn't normally hear. And I know that's all intuition because it's this inner spark and we're all connected to it. It's kind of, hard to even explain, but it's just me listening on another level to the intuition.
And do you find that with the clients that you work with, are you finding what kind of I found that most women aren't tapped into their own intuition? They aren't paying attention to those instincts?
Yeah, I find that a lot. A lot of times they're not trusting of it. Like they may hear it a little bit, but they're confusing it with something else, or they don't trust that what they're hearing is true. So they're often asking for confirmation, or can you tell me what is to come? Oh, yeah, I kind of felt like this was happening. So I'm like, well, so then you already knew. And really all I'm doing is reconfirming, what you know, but why did you need someone else outside of you to tell you what is internal to you? There's a lack of trust there. And that's what I find.
Because that is really my question is, why don't we listen to it? Why do we need someone else to then confirm the thing? Because I know I have done it where I opted to make a choice, or I'm contemplating a choice and I run it by a friend and they say, this is what you should do. And I was like, well, yeah, like I kind of knew that, and so like, why are we this way? Why don't we listen to that inner voice?
I think it's so many reasons why we don't listen to it. I mean, you talked about it earlier. We're conditioned. A lot of us are conditioned out of trusting that. We're conditioned to also not make people feel bad. We're conditioned to be nice. We're conditioned to not make things awkward. We're conditioned to just go with the flow and be with everyone else. So being an individual and saying, okay, I know that 50 of my friends are doing this over here, and this thing within me is saying, the something has said, don't do that. Am I supposed to listen to that and then be by myself and everybody else is over here? Like, there's so many reasons why we don't listen to it. And I don't know that we attribute some of the consequences of the things that we've experienced to not listening to it, or if we're even aware of the things that we miss out on by not taking the advice that's given. It's a practice. It's a practice to even recognize what is the difference between you in your head telling you not to do something because you're afraid versus something else, something deeper, something that is more, spiritually aligned, whatever, that's not really you, but you, that says, do this. And you're like, I don't even know where this is coming from. Is this really what I should be doing? And it is. So there's so many reasons.
You said a whole lot in that. You said a whole lot in that. One thing you said was like, we may not even be aware of the consequences of when we ignore the intuition and that sort of thing. And something I used to always say, I didn't always pay attention to it, is follow your first mind. Because if you think about it, all those times that you're like, this didn't go, I should have followed my first mind. So even knowing that, like, I didn't do it. Like, and I've seen the consequences of what happens when I don't follow my first mind on something. Then you also said, we've been conditioned to be nice, not to hurt any feelings. And that, I don't know that pet peeve is a strong enough term for that, because I actually had started to do an episode, I think called Fuck Being Nice, because, like I think about all of the trauma and heartache I have been through in my life because I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be polite. I was trying to spare somebody else at the cost of my own self.
Yes.
And
that is dishonoring you.
It is dishonoring you. And I really have issue with the fact that men are not expected to do that at all. Nobody has an expectation of a man to be nice or to consider other people's feelings or to put other people before themselves.
No. Oh, listen. Just gonna sit back here and breathe. Let's go breathe on that.
So yeah, like I said, in that, and what in your response, you said a whole lot of things and touched on a whole lot of hot buttons for me. So in something else you said, it's a practice. So let's talk about that. How do we practice getting in tune with our intuition and listening to ourselves? How do we get more in tune with our intuition?
I mean, it really varies for each person. And for me, it's been about working to, not to be cliche, but quiet my mind, so to speak. So that means I'll go out and I walk, and then I just am paying attention to nature and just try to be not someplace else in my mind, but just being in the moment. And as a result of just being present, then things just start to come to me. And then I just allow them to come to the surface, and then I pay attention to them. And then I'm like, oh, is there more? Is there more here? Something else I'm supposed to hear? Something else I'm supposed to feel or see? So that's being in motion, I think, is important, whether it's walking, whether it is just, I don't know, like being outside, walking in the grass, something. It's just nature helps with that for me. Another thing I like to do to help me, meditation for some people. I do energy work. So one of the things that I do is emotional freedom technique. It's for some people, they know it as tapping. So it's just tapping on these points along your body and allowing for, your thoughts to just come up and out. So you're releasing it. And then it helps to quiet some of the noise. And then that is typically when I can access my intuition. I think the biggest part of the practice is being able, or starting to learn, what's the difference between when you're in your head and there's fear present versus this thought just popped up out of nowhere. There's no fear in it. It doesn't feel like fearful, like what that feels like. But it's just this knowing, like, you shouldn't take that turn. And then when you start listening to that more often, because again, it's never wrong. It is absolutely guaranteed never to be wrong. Even if everybody else is taking the turn, you're like, well, I don't see what the problem is. I mean, I should take the turn. No, the something told you not to take the turn. Don't take the turn. So the more that you listen to your intuition, the stronger your ability to recognize it becomes. So that's pretty much my big three, like being in motion, being out in nature, being present, using energy healing to like get me more in tune with my body, to listen, and also to do as it says so that I can often recognize it better. And also how it was helpful, because you make that left turn, go around there, and then there's some stuff you can't see. Then there's the whole traffic jam that you couldn't have possibly seen. And now you're getting home 2 hours later. So
I can't tell you how many times I've had things, and I really hope I am not alone in this, but where I've had that thing pop up and I immediately dismiss it because it's like, don't make that left turn. And then I'll immediately think, but I need to get to XYZ place. Mm-hmm, and not even realizing that in that moment, what I am doing is dismissing my intuition. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that is very common. Like if I almost feel like if it doesn't come from an outside source, I almost don't trust it, which is kind of counterintuitive and counter of how we should be moving through the world. You made mention of energy work. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little bit? Because that's not something I'm familiar with.
Sure. So energy work really is about working on the energy of your body. Like, we're energetic beings. There is a lot of, blood and water and all sorts of amazing things running through our body. And energy work really is just around regulating your energy. It could make it more calmer. It could make it so that you're not so frazzled. It could make it so that when you're experiencing an emotional trigger or a high emotional intensity, that energy work is a tool to help you to bring it down and regulate that so that you can make better decisions, so you're not so stressed out, help you to relax. There's all sorts of things that I've done with it. You can heal trauma with it. You can heal past lives or whatever some people do with it. Birth stories, money stories. It's huge. And I like to use it just to help me to regulate like my emotions. I use it to help me to just get clear around what I'm feeling around certain situations so that I'm not, it's just loud up there all the time. So it's an easy practice that I do. And it's just tapping on these points on the body and just saying what's true, like honestly true. Like, even though I'm feeling like shit right now, or even though I'm really pissed off right now, I'm okay in this moment. Like, I'm not going to die. I'm not gonna kill nobody, whatever feels right, just to let you to process the emotions. So it's not just sitting on your heart or in your body to cause other problems later. So.
And you mentioned meditation.
Yes.
I have no clue how to meditate, because the thought, like, I guess I'm not sure where I even picked up this notion that meditation is about emptying your mind, and my mind never stops, because I try and sit there and not think about anything, and then I'm thinking about, am I not thinking about anything? My mind should be blank right now. Why isn't my mind blank?
It's not
So
possible.
okay, so if somebody is wanting, to get more in touch with themselves and to quiet their mind so that they can actually, hone in on listening, what is a way that they could try to meditate?
A way to try to meditate could just simply be, when a thought comes, if you have a period of time, let's say it's even 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be that long. I wouldn't start anybody off, let's just do it for an hour. Like, torture, wouldn't do it. So if you do it for a minute, you do it for 5 minutes. But in that time frame, when a thought comes, I recognize the thought. There's no judgment that you're applying to the thought. There's no thought that you're going to pile on top of the thought. Just you get to the point where you see it. I'm acknowledging that the thought is there. And then you just kind of notice it just float on. And then it's another thought. And then you keep doing that. And next thing you know, 5 minutes is up. That's really it. So the thought is going to be there. Like, it's going all the time, but it's a matter of what we do with the thoughts that we have. Do we now, which is what we normally do, which we take the thought, we build upon the thought, we have emotions around the thought, we play it out and we're swirling, and then we're here all day. So taking the thought and not attributing any judgment one way or the other about it, and saying, I see you.
Okay.
I see you. I see you. And another way that I like to do meditation work is around breathing. So just focus on breathing, focus on the type of breathing that I do. Like, where am I breathing from? Like, where I hold the breath in my body, what's moving when I inhale, what's not moving, or what's moving when I'm exhaling. Maybe I'm counting to 3 when I'm inhaling, I'm holding it for 5, and I'm exhaling for 7, or I'm so I'm not really focused on all of this stuff that's going on around me, but just on the thing that keeps me alive, which is breath, and the way that it's, showing up in my body and how things are moving. And again, that's not something like, do that for 10 hours. Like, absolutely not. Like 5 minutes, a minute, just to start, breathing in through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, making noises when you exhale. That's all still meditative work.
Okay. That sounds very similar to some things that I've done in a yoga class before. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
Yeah. They do make it sound complicated. Like, you're just supposed to be, wind chimes and shit up in here. And you're like, not natural, not possible.
You were before you were talking about, like, when that thought, that piece of intuition pops into your head about whether fear is present or not. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that? Because, I've got some feelings and some thoughts about the way we and I'm talking about we, the global we, the royal we, that we allow fear sort of to rule us and to dictate how we are living, and that then keeps us from living the life that we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that fear is huge. I don't know that we're ever going to be without fear. I know that there's all these books and things out there that tell us about, eradicating fear.
Because I don't know that getting rid of the fear is necessary.
I don't think it is either. I don't think not only is it necessary, I don't think it's possible. And I think that fear really is, even though the way this shows up could be very, uncomfortable, it could be very just debilitating in all sorts of ways, and dangerous and whatnot. But I do think that fear is also there to keep us safe. It's also there to keep us within the bubble that we know, not to go outside of that, because what is out there is something that typically we're not used to. It's not something that's common for us. It's like we have to now be present. We got to think about these things because it's not necessarily an experience that we've had before. So you got to be, firing on all tens or whatever, just to be out there. But fear really is about keeping us safe. So even if that means keeping us small, even if that means keeping us in circumstances that are really uncomfortable for us, things that we don't even want. Like fear is like keeping people broke right now because they don't know how to manage their money and they're afraid that when they get it, they're going to lose it. So it's like, I want all the money in the world, but your fear is like, no, you really don't. You don't know how to manage that. So it's really to just keep you in this boundary, in this safe bubble. But the way that fear feels, for the most part, like that feeling in your body, when you start to really get in touch with like how you feel in your body, it's like that fear sits on your stomach or it's this weighted feeling or something like that. But even on a smaller scale, you start to know what fear feels like to you. And intuition doesn't feel like that at all. Half the time it's like, bloop, oh, I didn't even know that, because you weren't thinking about it. It's like, I'm not fearful about making a left turn.
I think you said something right there. Like, as you start to pay attention, you'll get better at understanding this is fear versus this is my intuition. And when you said about, fear keeps us playing small and fear keeps us in uncomfortable spaces, I'm over here feeling very convicted because I'm thinking about, and anybody watching this, if you watch the episode I did or listen to the episode I did with WHERE about leaving things that no longer serve us, like when I got divorced, I should have been left, but I kept talking myself out of it because my intuition was all in my ear, like, girl, this ain't right. This ain't where you're supposed to be. But I dismissed it. I rationalized it. I let fear keep me in a place that was detrimental to my well-being in every way you can imagine. And it kept me small because I was more concerned with not upsetting the apple cart versus what is right for me, like preserving. And it finally got to a place where even though I still had those thoughts about, and it was like, if you don't leave, there will be no you left. And so, and that's, like I said, I know I should have left long ago, but when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that was fear keeping me in a place where I was being mistreated and kept me playing small. I can think again, probably when I contemplated, like moving to another country, like when I first moved to Mexico and I didn't have a job, like everything in my head was probably saying like, maybe that's, but I feel like I want to believe that I have gotten better about listening. And when a thought pops up saying, where is this coming from? Is this about, or when I am tempted to dismiss it, I feel like I've grown a lot when it comes to dismissing intuition. And I will catch myself and say, why are you poo-pooing this? Why are you downplaying this? Maybe you should listen to this. I feel like I've gotten better in the last 5-6 years about that. So that like last year when I decided, okay, I'm done, I'm going to quote unquote retire. And instead of worrying about, girl, you're only 45, how are you going to eat? I was like, it'll work itself out.
Yes.
Like,
and look at it.
Right. Yeah, because it is partially because I don't let fear dictate how I move, but also because I feel like I have gotten better about listening to my intuition, because there are a lot of things I think that, like, somebody messaged me today, somebody DM'd them And they were like, how would you respond? Because this person was asking to connect with them so they could pick their brain. And they were at, yes, I see your face.
That was really,
but no. And they asked me, they were like, how would you respond to this? And I said, you know, first of all, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Because again, your intuition, when you read this, you would immediately be like, oh yeah, or you're kind of, when you kind of feel like, that's your intuition right there, it's telling you how you feel about it. But it's about learning to listen to that. And that's what occurred to me as she was asking me for advice. And like you said before, you already know the answer. So when I responded with, well, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And, you know, how this person was coming, like, they weren't like, hey, I see the value in having some of your time. Let me take you out, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, hey, can you do this for me? And so in this person's response, she was like, yeah, it is not a hell yes for me. But because again, I helped her see what she already knew.
Right. It's almost like you gave her permission. You know, it's like you gave her permission to be like, this is not only a hell no to me, but I can also say no to this. You know, and that's hard for people because again, when we get to conditioning, we want to be nice. We want everybody to like us. We don't want to be up here being a bitch for no reason, even though people just have the audacity to say, I see the value and you do it for free, as opposed to how about I give you some money or something in return that you actually want and can use for the time that you're going to be giving me, which is the audacity, but you know, yeah,
no,
you gave
what
permission.
you said, giving the permission. And so I would challenge anybody who is listening to this or watching this, that if we've said anything today that is convicting you, like you can hear, oh, that's me right there, I do that all the time, find somebody else to run the stuff by, to give yourself permission, or start giving yourself permission, because that's kind of what I start to do. I stop worrying about being a bitch and worry about being nice, because I don't owe anybody anything.
You don't. You really don't. And it's important to get to the point where you recognize that it's really about trusting yourself. Like the intuition is a part of you. And if you have to go outside of yourself all of the time to reinforce what you know to be true, then the real question is, why do you need to do that? Why can't you sit with what is true for you? Why can't you sit with your yeses and your nos and your choices and take the responsibility one way or the other? It's important to learn to fully trust ourselves, like be honest, trust, all of that. Like that's the work, you know, that's what we're doing here. And it's not easy. I get it. Because especially when we've made a decision and the decision has resulted in some nonsense. And then you're like, well, I can't trust myself because look what I let myself go through, or look what I let myself do, and look how that turned out. But really, the trust isn't in looking at those past things that you've done, because that's a part of the story. There was things in that for you to turn you into who you are now. Hopefully someone who recognizes your strength in a way that you may not have recognized it before. Someone who can now see how to ask for help, which is a really hard thing for a lot of independent women to do. They want to do it all because you don't trust other people to help. And the resources and the support and all of these amazing things about yourself, that typically comes from, you can see that now because of some of the things that we've been through. So we got to forgive those things and learn that we can trust us with anything. Like we are the vault and the keeper of us. So we got to learn to be better about trusting ourselves. And when that intuition comes up, once you do that work to trust yourself more, when it comes up, you're like, unequivocally, absolutely, if I got to make the left, I'm making the left. There was a story I wanted to share as it relates to travel, of how intuition came in and I believe saved my own life. I was in San Francisco for a work assignment, which just so happened to be the week of Gay Pride, like their Pride Parade. Never been to one before. And I had stayed after because San Francisco was one of my favorite cities. So I was like, oh, I get to see what else is going on. And I rode up and down all the trolleys and all the other things. And by the end of the night, I was heading back to my apartment that I had rented because it's in the night. And I know that there's this particular trolley car that runs up and down Market Street, and then it goes over to Fisherman's Wharf, which is where I was staying. But that trolley car is so super crowded. People are sitting on people's laps, standing in the aisle. It's like you can barely breathe. You don't even know if you're going to be able to get off. So I know that there's this little nondescript, non-well-lit corner that's the first stop. So I'm like, I'm heading over here so I could be the very first person, because no one knows about that unless you live in San Francisco. I'm going to head over here in this nondescript, non-well-lit corner to go get this trolley. And then within a blink, you're at the very next stop, which is the Embarcadero. And that's like the market center. So there's like this huge, well-lit situation, ton of people there, always well-lit, skateboarders, people smoking weed, the whole thing. I'm on my way walking after I got off a bus to this corner, and I see these two ladies, and they're in the distance a little bit, but they start approaching me. And they're walking faster as they're getting to me. And then they're asking, hey, I need directions. Da, 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 da. And my intuition was like, something is not right here. And I didn't say, well, I know where they need to go and I can give them directions. I know what they're asking me and I could be of help to them. My intuition was like, absolutely not. You need to go the other way.
Because I would argue that society would say you're supposed to help them. Yes. That's what we've been taught and what we've been internalizing.
Yes. And any other time, had I been not someone who doesn't listen to my intuition, I would have ignored that. And I would have said, but they need my help. And I want to be nice to these people. And they're asking for directions someplace I've been to a million times. Sure, I would love to help them. Help people all the time. And when I listened, it was like, you have to get away from these women. And I went back to the bus that I was on, knocked on the door. And I wasn't like freaking out, like, oh my God, they're after me. It wasn't knocked on the door. I got on the bus and was kind of standing a little bit back from the driver. And I said, these ladies are looking for X, Y, and Z. Can you direct them where they're supposed to go? And he's, oh yeah, absolutely. Just jovial, tells them the directions. And I'm standing where they're standing. They can still see me, but they're like intent on listening to him for the directions. But then one of them turned around and she gave me this look. And I knew they were not about, it wasn't about the directions. Like they were either going to hurt me or they were going to try to rob me or something. But it was like, she made it clear in her facial expression that what they were doing, it was not the truth. Like it would have done me harm had I gone forward and not listened. So when they got off the bus, they said, thank you. When they went and tweaked whatever they were doing, wherever they were going. And I just stayed on the bus for a little bit. I talked to the driver, just like, oh my God, it's a crazy day. I've been out here. It's my first time, just a jovial conversation, and just waited until I was pretty sure that they were wherever they were, got off. Now I decided to roll my ass to the stop I didn't want to go to with all the people. Like, you know what, I will stand if that means that I'm not going to get robbed tonight. So that was, one situation where my intuition like saved me. But your intuition isn't just about warning you all the time. Your intuition is also about, you should do this, or you should talk to that person, or you should try for this. And you're like, but I did. You got all the excuses, all the reasons why it's not the move.
The excuses.
But when you do it, and when you listen, it's like, I would have never done this, but yet and still, this has been the thing that's changed my life. I met one of my closest friends that way. Like, she's some random lady at a labyrinth walk somewhere. And I was doing some spiritual work, like on a walk, it was my sacred time that I discovered. And I was like, I'm gonna do this every Sunday. It's gonna be me in the park crying and tapping on myself. It's gonna be great because I love it. And they were the intuition. You should invite that lady to your sacred walk. I was like, excuse you? I don't even know her. Did you not hear sacred walk? Like, that's complete me time. I'm gonna be out in there screaming and crying like a crazy person, just so I'm freeing my emotions out on my little private journey. Like, I don't know this lady. You should invite her. I invited her, and from the very first time we went for a walk, I was like, okay, I see why. Intuition was like, you should need to invite her. And that's like 7 years ago. I talk to her like every day. Like, she don't talk me off a couple of bridges. So she's, amazing. But listening means that I have a friend for life now that I would have never asked her ever in a million years, asked her to go on that walk with me. And now years later, I'm like over the moon that I listened.
I'm so glad that you said that intuition is not just about warning you about some danger. It's also about like, this is a choice that you should make. Like, this is one of those things you should step out of. Like, this will be good for you. I'm really glad, because I think oftentimes we often think about it solely about avoiding danger, avoiding situations that might put us in harm. Earlier, you talked about when people are ignoring their intuition, or they're not trusting it, or they're always having to look outside themselves. You really have to ask, why don't you trust yourself? That is a tough question. That's an uncomfortable question.
Very much so.
But I think that is an excellent, I have a friend who that's her job. She asks those uncomfortable questions, and I will find that my reflex is, why is she asking? But instead I remind myself, she's asking that question from a good place. And why does my response, why am I immediately negative to that? Like, because she touched a nerve. Yeah, and so I see that question, like, why don't you trust yourself? That's going to touch a nerve. But I think if you can sit with yourself and you can answer that question, you can really unlock some stuff.
Yeah. And that's not going to be just a one-time sit down conversation with you. Like, well, why don't you trust yourself? I don't trust myself because, and you're like, oh, wow. All right. Well, I apologize. I'm making peace. Okay. We good now. Like, that's not what that's going to be. You're going to come up with a laundry list of reasons why, and what happened when, and what you did and what you didn't do. And you don't see that it's an ongoing conversation, but ultimately what it leads to is learning to forgive yourself for the choices that you made, the choices that you didn't make, because that's life, right? Like, life happens. And then also it's about finding the things within the choices that you made too, that actually ended up being a good thing, or finding those things within that where you could be grateful. And that in and of itself could help you to forgive yourself more, like, and more quickly. It's like, okay, well, I did that. That was really fucked up. But, you know, I made a good friend out of that, or I learned something new about myself that I wasn't aware of ever. But it's important to do that because you all you got.
Yes, you are all you got. And I think that part about forgiving yourself, that's big, because we always hear like, you're your own worst critic. I think we are also the ones who hold stuff against ourselves, like a grudge, or, much longer than is appropriate or necessary. We're not very forgiving of ourselves. And I think that's something to be explored. Like, why is that? Why? Because do you not think you deserve to be forgiven? Because that's another. Don't. And that's sad.
Don't believe that. It's very sad.
That is sad, but that's also another uncomfortable question that we might need to sit with for a minute.
Yeah. You might need to hire a therapist to help you to work through that. Like, I got one.
Yeah. And I think it is important for us to mention therapy here, because I can't even find the words why, but I think therapy really is key to being able to answer those questions, to be able to forgive yourself, to be able to examine your inner self and your feelings without, I don't think guilt is the word, but without, I don't know what the word is I'm trying to think of.
Judgment.
That's the word. Yeah. Without judgment.
Yeah. And they are trained. A lot of us like, look, I got good girlfriends. I can tell my business too. They got their own stuff. Okay. Not to mention a lot of they don't have the capacity for your stuff and their stuff too. And how loving is it to just call up and be like, just vomit on the phone and just hand it over to them. And they're like, I'm barely holding it together myself. Like, you gonna give me your stuff too? Like, I can't even carry my bags. Like, your bags too. Okay, just pile them on top. So it's a place for you to be honest, maybe sometimes in a way that you're not even honest with your friends. You know, they may not be capable of even asking you some of the pointed questions. They're only going to take you so far sometimes, because when you do get triggered and then your trigger response comes out, whether it's the anger or the retreat or the whatever defense mechanism you have, they're like, look, oh, you know what, close it up. But a therapist, they know what to do with that. They know where to go with that. They know how to diffuse that. So hiring someone who is professionally trained to be able to access these things, ask you questions, bring you around, change perspective, and deal with the aftermath of what you're going to be going through as you start to go to deeper levels of yourself and unearth this nastiness. Like, that's their job. That's not a job of a friend.
No, it's not. And it's unfair to put that on our friends. It really is. I have enjoyed this conversation quite a bit. If somebody is watching this and they're listening to this and they want to connect with you, they want to see and learn more about your work, where should they do that?
2 places. They should go to my YouTube channel, Biba's Blessings Box. I'm getting it up to a certain number of subscribers so I can make the last whatever digits.
The cute little URL. But if you go to YouTube right now, they would just search Biba's Blessing Box.
Yes, Biba's Blessings Box. And my first name is Biba. So just to put that out there. And also via email, which is easy, Biba's Blessings Box @gmail. So if they have any questions, want to reach out, then feel free to do so. Okay. But those are my 2 favorite places.
I really hope that y'all enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I've said it before, one of the keys to living the life on your terms, a life that you love, is really listening to yourself and determining what it is you want. And I think intuition is a huge piece of that. So like I said, I hope y'all dug this week's episode. Yeah. So, let me know what your thoughts are about this topic, about this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment. You can also use the link in the description to leave me a voicemail. And you can also DM me on social media. You know that I am Picky Girl Travels on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, I'm Picky Girl Travels, except there is no I in the word girl. If there is a topic that you would like me to dig into here on the podcast, feel free to let me know. As always, thank you so much for your support. If you haven't done so already, click subscribe, leave a review. If you're listening to this on any of the podcasting platforms, leave a review of the show that helps other women find the podcast so that they can get something from it as well. Another way that you can show your support is financially. If you are in a place where you can contribute financially, you can do that. There is a link in the description to become a patron on Anchor, or you could use the link in the YouTube description to buy me a hot chocolate, because y'all know I don't drink coffee. But thank you all so much for being here, and until next time.